is my presentation on my signature project, Stage 2. Original problem. The data on the right side of my screen is the AR Performance Record Report for my class this past year. As you can see what students scored on their leveled book level and what they scored on free choice book level. Summary of data and problem. The table in the slide above will depict students' accelerated reader test scores on books within their determined proximal development zone and the test scores on their free choice book, which is usually outside their zone of proximal development. This data was compiled using my students from this past school year's generated AR performance report. A passing score for an AR test is 80% accuracy and above. After looking over the data in the graph above, 78% of students passed AR tests on their reading level. In contrast, 68% of students passed AR tests on books above their suggested reading level. This data confirms that students are scoring poorly on AR tests that they take after reading the book at least 3 times. The problem this study addressed was poor scores on accelerated reader tests on higher books outside of their zone of proximal development. Summary of background literature research. Vygotsky defined ZPD as the distance between the actual developmental level as determined by independent problem solving and the level of potential development as determined through problem solving under adult guidance or in collaboration with capable peers. Students are most receptive to instruction within their ZPD because the next logical step in their ongoing development is presented. The teacher should connect prior learning and new learning as much as possible. Several studies on the relationship of reading fluency and comprehension in students in elementary to high school have concluded that the more fluent readers are, the better their comprehension of text is. When students choose to read books outside of their zone of proximal development, more than likely the student is not fluently reading the book and as a result cannot pass a comprehension test on the book. Outline of the action plan. Sample method and description. The sampling technique is purposive sampling. It is purposive because my judgment was used to determine the sample based on the needed data. The students participating in the study are the only student whose data I have access to. I use purposive sampling as my sample technique due to the impossibility of performing random sampling due to not having enough students to select randomly. Instrumentation. This action plan will be conducted using observations and experiment. The observations will take place as students are taking their AR test, and the experiment will take place as the action plan is put into place. Collaborative efforts. The school librarian and I will work together to discuss strategies to share with students who are not passing AR tests. The librarian will also show me how to conduct these conferences with students to ensure that students understand and are receiving helpful information. Internal and external validity. Accelerated reader quizzes are intended to assess whether students have read and comprehended books, articles, or selections of text from textbooks. Students read multiple books and pieces of text throughout the school year, and their cumulative progress is measured against goals recommended by Renaissance and set by teachers. In actual classroom use of accelerated reader, a student's average percentage correct on several quizzes is the critical indicator monitored by both the teacher and student via accelerated reader. Performance on anyone's examination is not as important because all the goal setting and monitoring of student progress are tied to the average percent correct for books read over an extended period of time. Procedures. Each student in my class will be registered for Renaissance Place. Renaissance Place is the main program that administers STAR and AR tests. Students are expected to log into Renaissance Place and take at least 4 AR tests a week. If a student fails a test, then I will hold a conference with them about their failure and determine what can be done to prevent failures in the future. If the failed test was a free choice book outside the student's ZPD, there will be a conversation about choosing books that might be too challenging for them. Ethical consideration. Special populations. The special population for this action plan is minor students. Confidentiality. Students' confidentiality and data will be protected through no two students using the same iPad to take AR assessments. Also, the data will come directly to me and a score will not pop up at the end of the test. IRB. The Institutional Review Board will consist of the school ARI reading coach, school librarian, and principal. These are important stakeholders that will understand the importance of the data. Results. Presentation of results. The data previously shared showed that students usually scored poorly on tests that were outside their zone of proximal development. I believe that if students can have a conference with the teacher to discuss their failing scores, then students will try harder to pass tests. Also, if a student fails an AR test on a free choice book, after the conference, the student might realize that they do not need to choose books that are outside their AR determined reading level. To see student achievement grow, I would need to see a higher percentage of students passing AR tests on books within their ZPD. I would also need to see a decrease in students taking tests on books that are substantially outside their ZPD. Reflection. Changes and additional research. A change that I would make in my original plan is to conduct conferences with students about failed AR tests. I have discovered that when students realize you as their teacher care about their data, that causes the student to care more and try harder in the future. I would also use the AR-based strategies to share with students during their conference. Additional research can be done to determine why students try and read books that they know are outside their zone of proximal development. The last slide here are the sources that I use to present the summary of background literature research connected to the identified problem. Thank you for watching.